Good morning, guys. So I am back with another video. This time it's another weekend vlog. This is my third, which I'm really excited about. I do have a fun reading weekend planned, so I am trying to finish 2 books this weekend, and that would be Beach Read by Emily Henry and The Paris Hours by Alex George. Something funny that I noticed is that both of their last names are also first names. Haha, very funny. Anyways, so basically these are both book of the month picks, and I'm not sponsored at all, I promise. I don't have enough subscribers to be sponsored. But I did sign up for the subscription service, and it's basically a subscription service where they give you a choice of 5 books every month, and you get to pick one for $14.99, I believe, and you can pick add-on books for like $9.99, I think. And so these are the 2 books that I chose for April, and I haven't read any of my book of the months yet, and I figured now would be a good time because I want to make sure that the service is actually for me, and if they're sending me books that I hate, then I'm obviously shouldn't be signed up. But I didn't want to read just one book and kind of have a one-off. I wanted to read 2. And I do have another book that I ordered for my May, but I did skip my June box so far, and then I'll probably get a July box as long as I like all of my book of the month picks. So I just wanted to make sure the service is good for me, so that's why I'm reading these books. And so I'm going to go ahead and summarize them for you, and then we'll jump into the vlog. So Beach Read is a book, it's just like a fun romance novel, I think, and it's about these 2 authors, one who writes like really great like literary fiction, and it's just like, you know, he's writing the best like American novels, and then the other one writes just like silly like romance novels. And they both kind of have writer's block, so they go to these beach houses in order to write, and they decide to kind of swap, and they're each going to write the opposite story, and then they go on like fun field trips, and obviously I'm pretty sure they fall in love. So I'm excited to read this book because I think it'll be just like fun and lighthearted. And then The Paris Hours is about, I believe it's 4 characters, and they're all in 1927 Paris, and for some reason their lives all intertwine within one day. I think it takes place within one day, but I'm not exactly sure. I don't want to read the whole blurb because they're all kind of long, but if you're interested in either of these books, you can of course Google them, and I'm sure you'll get a great explanation. But those are my reading picks, and then of course I always have my backup book, which is The Tale of Two Cities, which I didn't get any progress in this entire week, so I'm going to try to at least read a couple chapters. But we'll see how that works out, especially since I'm kind of being a little bit ambitious trying to read 2 books this weekend. But without further ado, let's get into the weekend. Okay, so I won 10 days in Asia I walked to Oman. I start in Oman. Mom, do you wanna?
I'll point.
No, but you have to point at the map.
Oh, okay. Where's Oman?
Oman's right here.
Here.
Okay, then I walk to Yemen. Then I take the orange plane to Russia. Then I walk to Mongolia. Then I walk back to Russia. Then I take the train to North Korea. And then I take the Pacific Ocean to Thailand. Here's my father's creation, just some simple pasta with meatballs. Compliments to the chef. Hey guys, so I changed into my pajamas. It is the end of the day and I did finish Beach Read. Woohoo! So I'm really pleased with that. I decided to talk about it with the cover on because I thought the naked version, which I read because I don't like to ruin the dust jacket, is very ugly in my opinion. Anyway, so I have a bunch of my thoughts written down on my phone, but I did just kind of generally want to talk. So I would give this book overall like a 3 out of 5 stars because I enjoyed it, but I didn't love it. And I even rated it on Book of the Month, which I was really excited to do because this is my first rating of a Book of the Month. I just liked it because, yeah, I liked it, I enjoyed it, but I don't think it was anything special, and I had a lot of misconceptions. So the first of those was just, I knew this book followed 2 authors, and for some reason I just assumed that would mean it would be dual perspective, but it ended up being first person from one author. And while I didn't necessarily mind it, I do generally prefer, first of all, third person, and I think I would have preferred the story had it been a dual perspective. Just because I do feel like we would have benefited to kind of hear from the male author's perspective. I thought that would have been interesting, but it's not like a huge thing. I guess the main misconception that I had was that I thought this was going to be like a really light and fluffy romance novel, and it honestly wasn't. It kind of had kind of a drearier undertone and a more serious undertone, where both of these authors, right, they have writer's block, and so I thought originally it was just like, oh, they have writer's block and that's why they want to write each other's stories, because they can't think of what to write in their own genre. But the reason for the writer's block is a lot more serious than that, and again, they have a lot of more serious underlying issues to kind of get through before they can really find themselves and like find each other. And so there is a more serious aspect of this book, which I can't say that I didn't necessarily like it, I just wasn't expecting that. And so because my mindset was like, oh, this is gonna be a cute summer read, it just kind of disappointed me a little bit, I guess I have to say. Now I have the notes on my phone, and so I wrote these all down while I was reading it, so it's more relevant to like while I was reading it and not necessarily to my overall ending thoughts, but they are still relevant. And I did this just because I didn't really want to clutter up the vlog with a lot of clips of me just talking about the book in separate instances. I thought it would just make sense for me to kind of decompress at the end of the day, so this is perfect. So the first thing that I had was that it maybe is like a little bit too adult for me in terms of the humor, because not that it's like dirty humor or that it's like explicit humor, but just like the references just weren't that funny to me, at least. And especially like they talked a lot about purse wine, and I don't know if that's just something that's like funny to adults, but I didn't think it was funny. Oh, that's my cat. So I didn't think it was funny, I just thought it was more sad. I feel like a lot of the characters kind of drank excessively, and I thought that was just kind of an issue. I don't really understand why. I don't think it added anything to the plot. I think at some points alcohol was used as an important plot device, but a lot of times it was just completely unnecessary. I just didn't think like the purse wine thing was funny, and I think that some of the moments that were intended to be more humorous just didn't strike a chord with me. I do generally think that the Book of the Month picks are not necessarily for my demographic. They might be for a little bit older. So, oh, here's my cat Nutmeg. And the next thing that I had to say was just that I did enjoy the romantic tension. I thought that was kind of a fun, I think she wrote it well, and she definitely like implied a lot of tension between them, but I thought a lot of times the tension was a little bit obvious. Like they were both clearly into each other for a long time, so I don't understand why they didn't do anything earlier. I do have to say, I'm going to kind of give a mild spoiler here, so I'll leave a timestamp if you want to skip the mild spoiler, but it's not super big. I just wanted to say that they kind of resolved the romantic tension very early, and like about halfway through the book. And so after that, the romantic tension is not really romantic like tension. It's more like they just have issues that are getting in the way of a potential relationship. And so I do feel like we kind of lost that fun aspect. Like, that's why it was like one of the first things that I wrote that I said, oh, I really like the romantic tension, but it did kind of fizzle out at the end, because by the end it was a lot more about like their problems that were interfering with their relationship. The next is that I didn't really like it in the beginning, but it grew on me, and I wrote that when I was on page 141 of Beach Read, and just for reference, I believe it's 358 pages. So I was getting close to halfway through when it started to grow on me, so it did take me a while to kind of get into it. I think especially in the beginning it was a little bit hard to kind of slog through, and I do feel like there are a lot of books that it takes time to develop a relationship with the character, but there are definitely some books that kind of yank you in and they grab you by like your shirt collar and they just throw you into the story, and you're just immediately immersed, and immediately you're kind of obsessed with the characters and everything. Okay, and then the next note that I had was just that I'm used to kind of bigger casts in general, and I think it's because I tend to read a lot of fantasy, and they usually have pretty big casts, especially if it's a series that goes on. You get introduced to more characters as time goes on a lot of times. This book felt very small to me in terms of like the world that they were trying to create, because it mostly centered around the main character, the love interest, the main character's best friend, then this kind of coffee shop lady. It felt a little bit claustrophobic at times just because of how small the world was. Or not the world, but the cast of characters. Like, I didn't feel like there was not much to explore, and I felt like it was really unrealistic in that sense, where she only had like one real friend. Because I guess in my personal experience, even when it comes to close friends, you usually have multiple close friends, and then you have usually like an outer ring of kind of acquaintances and friends that are maybe not as close. So it did kind of surprise me. I understand that it's a book, and so there's only so many characters you can develop, but it just kind of struck me that it was very small. And then I said it was funny because it acts like an adult novel in its grittiness, but the romanticization of love is the same in YA. So it was interesting because I read a bunch of adult contemporary novels, and in a lot of those, a constant theme was like the inevitable deterioration of marriage. Like, marriage will deteriorate like no matter what. And while I do understand how that's like a real life concept, I do think a lot of YA books portray love as very much like happily ever after. And so it was kind of funny because I felt like the Beach Read kind of romanticized like love in some ways, but in also other ways it tried to be like kind of gritty and realistic. So I don't know, it was just like a little bit amusing to me that it kind of had that contrast. Okay, and then I just had to say that her name was January, and for some reason it does annoy me a little bit when books try to have like really unique character names that are just kind of not normal. I think that like there are a lot of beautiful names in fantasy that I really enjoy and like, but I don't know, just January and then the guy's name was Augustus, I thought that was like a little bit too on the nose. I don't know if I'm using that expression wrong. There was a relevance in the plot, but it was so minor that her name could have just been like Emily or whatever, and like that would have been equally fine. Like, I don't understand why her name had to be January. That was kind of like extra. Oh yeah, and then the stories that both of them wrote, I don't know if the author was intending to make them just sound absolutely ridiculous, but like both of the stories were just insane. Like, I would never, like, if I was given the blurb of both of the stories that they wrote, there's no way that I would read them because they're just so weird. January first had the idea for her book. I genuinely thought it was a joke, and I was like, that's funny, but it wasn't a joke. She was being serious, and I was like, girl, okay. Anyways, so those are my thoughts on Beach Read. I'm sorry if I rambled on for a really long time, but I did my best to try to keep this just a little bit concise. I hope that kind of worked. And then I will be moving on to the Paris Hours tomorrow. Again, this is kind of an ugly naked book, which is unfortunate. So I painted my nails with this new polish that I got from Essie. The job isn't really well done because I'm not that good at painting my nails, but I am pretty pleased overall. The polish is dried really fast, which I think is really nice. and they don't smell horrible, so that's also great. Here's the final product, our spaghetti with zucchini and chicken. It looks delicious. So I'm back. It is evening again, and this time I have finished The Paris Hours by Alex George, and I have to say I honestly loved this book so much. I can't really quantify what made it so amazing, but I'll try my best. I would say it's not really a 5-star read for me because I kind of want to save this for the really top tier books, and there was a bit of this book that I didn't feel like fully immersed me in the world. Like, I did feel like I was watching the story rather than being a part of it, if that makes sense, but it was still very beautiful, and I still loved the characters, and I thought it was really interesting. And so I would probably give it a solid 4 out of 5 stars, and kind of looking back, I'm almost thinking that Beach Read would be like a 2.5 out of 5 stars, so I think I'm gonna kind of change that because I do feel like I've marinated on it a little bit, and I was a little bit biased when I just finished the book, and now I'm thinking a little bit more clearly, and I guess same could go for this book, so I don't know if my rating will change, but at the moment it's a solid 4 out of 5 stars, and I really only wrote 3 things down, so I don't even need to look at my phone. I know what I said, and the 3 things were: 1, that it just has some beautiful prose, like just the way it's written is very beautiful. It has a very elegant style that's almost reminiscent to me of kind of the classics, and it just felt very beautiful. I almost felt like I was honored to be reading this story because it's just so beautifully written, and I really loved that. The second thing that I said was just that it makes me want to go to 1927 Paris, and all the talk about cheeses and bread made me so hungry. I wanted them so bad. The third thing that I had to say was that this book felt a little bit directionless, but not in a bad way. Like, in a previous video, I talked about how I don't like books that don't feel like they have direction, and I honestly don't, because in a lot of those books, I feel like I'm lost and I don't know where the plot is headed. But in this case, it didn't feel like I was lost. It felt like I was wandering, if that kind of makes sense. Like, there wasn't necessarily like a singular direction that I knew the plot was going to go in, because all I really knew about this story was that it was about 4 strangers and their lives kind of intertwine, and I had no idea how they would intertwine or kind of what would happen in the story, although there are some kind of clues that are given to you. But what really kind of made it more interesting was that you didn't really know where it was going. And so in this case, I didn't feel like it was a negative. I felt like it was actually a positive aspect of the book. And then all in all, I just feel like it was just such a fun read. It just very much made me want to read. Like, I do feel like part of the time I was reading Beach Read, I was kind of forcing myself to read because I really wanted to finish it in a day. Whereas this, I felt like it felt very natural to kind of fall into reading it, and it was just very easy and like lighthearted. So that's kind of all I have to say, I think, because I don't have so many. I think right now I'm just like a little bit shook by the book, and I don't think I have a lot of specific thoughts, and I obviously don't have any criticisms. I just really enjoyed the book. I guess the only thing that I could say that took me out a little bit from the story was that obviously it's set in Paris, and so there are a lot of places. There were places that I recognized and then places that I didn't, and since I don't really have like a mental map of Paris, I couldn't exactly picture where these characters were going and what they were doing. And there were a couple words that I had to Google, not a lot, but there was one, kind of a funny one that I had to Google. Those are my thoughts on the Paris Hours. I would really recommend this. I think I'm going to recommend it to my mom actually, because sorry about my cat. She wants to get into my closet so bad. But I think I'm actually going to recommend this to my mom because I think this is the kind of book that she would read. It's not really fun, I would have to say. It's just an interesting historical fiction, and it really does transport you to the time. And I do feel like the story itself is very meaningful, and there's just, I don't know, it's just, I don't know, I just really enjoyed it is all I have to say. So the next thing that I will probably be picking up after the weekend is over, which you guys won't get to see me read in this vlog, but I'm actually planning on making a separate vlog, is The Young Elites by Marie Lu. I've owned this series for the longest time and I just keep avoiding it, and I decided it was time to just sit myself down and say, okay, I'm going to read it. So I'm gonna set myself a goal. I'm not really sure the time span exactly, but I'm gonna try to read these books pretty fast. That way, if I don't like them, it doesn't take up a lot of my reading time, and if I do like them, it'll help immerse me in the world. So that's all I have to say, and I will see you guys another time. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, and bye. Blah, 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 blah. Okay,